All right, welcome in. 32 teams in 32 days. Important nonsense. Today we have the Miami Dolphins. We're taking our talent down to Miami. As always, I am joined by my OG locked in crew, Mason Cameron, Vishaal Gupta. Mason, how you doing today?
Steve, I don't let Neil off with saying we're on to Cincinnati, and I can't let you off with we're taking our talents to South Beach. I just can't.
What if
But
I was at a Boys and Girls Club in Cleveland? Would that be okay then? Would that be all right?
oh god. All right, LeBron,
Still no?
let's relax.
Wow.
Let's
All
relax
right.
for LeBron. Okay. So, anyway, I'm excited because we get to talk about one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL.
You're excited because we're going to talk about your doppelganger.
That's
It's
hey.
You
Hey,
gotta, I mean, as long as Mike McDaniel's the coach down there, you got a locked in Halloween costume every year. So
all I'm saying is it could get worse for coach lookalikes. I
sure.
could be sitting in the stands of Chiefs games like the Andy Reid lookalike,
Right.
but he
Could be
does it. He
McDaniel Hackett.
plays the role a little bit better than I do anyway. But I'm excited. V, what's up with you? How are you doing? I'm happy that we get to tap into a little bit of talk before the season really gets underway here. What's up with you? How are you living?
Living good. Excited to talk about the Dolphins. Assuming we don't have to talk about their eventual playoff struggles, we can just talk about how good they're going to be
Right.
during the regular season. How
Yeah,
much fun it's going to be to watch them.
no,
Yeah.
V, we have the script now. We've pretty much written the script over the years. We've got it. We know bet heavy Miami early,
Yep.
When they
fade
play Denver,
midseason,
especially.
Right.
especially fade
Miami weeks
midseason.
1 through 10. You want all that.
Exactly.
All of that you can get. And then trade at the trade deadline.
The second you see snow outside your window, start
Mhm.
fading the Dolphins.
as soon as that
Oh my
temperature
God. Is
starts to
somebody
drop,
wearing a sweater vest? All right. We got to start
fade
trading Dolphins.
fade the Dolphins.
Get them out of here.
Those
All right.
hammies start getting tight in the cold weather.
We are recording this on August 8th. Everything we are talking about is related to 12 team PPR using the Fantasy Pros ADP and rankings and all of that jazz. Talking about Miami, you got to start with Tua. It's Tua time. They tanked for Tua and it worked and he got paid. He is the man in Miami for the foreseeable future. Because when you think about the greatest, highest paid Dolphins quarterback of all time, it's definitely Tua Tagovailoa. We all can agree on that. There's no debate. Right now, QB 14 in the ECR, 88 overall, ADP QB 13. So pretty much in line at the end of the 9th or start of the 10th. Pick your poison. Vishal, how you feeling about Tua this season?
I have no problems if people want to take Tua around that range, end of the 9th, start of the 10th. That feels like pretty good value. He's probably not a guy you're going to count on to win your league necessarily at the quarterback position, but he can put up some serious numbers with those weapons, whether it's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, or Devin Achane coming out of the backfield. This is an explosive offense, led the league for the majority of the season in scoring, put up 70 in a single game last year. Sorry, Mason, I have to bring it up whenever I can. This is an explosive offense, and Tua's at the center of it for fantasy purposes. He will stay healthy for you throughout the regular season and hopefully into the fantasy playoffs. So you can usually count on him to get you pretty far. But there are other options at quarterback around that range and even later on that, might float your boat a little bit more, whether you want to wait a few rounds to take an Aaron Rodgers or, Geno Smith or something like that. And you can kind of fill in your roster at other more critical positions. But if you want to take Tua where he's going, I don't think there's an issue with that. I think he'll be a very high floor type guy for you.
I do want to come back to that in a minute. Do you have anything, Mason, on Tua?
Well, first and foremost, I'd love to know what Dan Marino's cap hit would have been if the cap was what it is today, 280 whatever $1 million it is today. I'd love to have seen it.
It'd probably be more than what he got paid to do Ace Ventura.
Yeah,
It would be my guess.
So I lean a different way. I'm very high on this offense. I think this is going to be again one of the best offenses in the NFL. If anybody remembers what I've talked about in some of the other shows where I've really been excited about an offense's potential to be in the top 5 in the league in production and EPA per play. Those other guys are way higher. Those guys are higher on this list. The Dak Prescotts of the world are much, much higher. And I get it. There's maybe some rushing floor differences there. But when you price the other guys that are kind of in this range, the Jordan Loves, the Dak Prescotts, like I said, the Brock Purdy's that are all in front of Tua, I think that this is just a trick of perception, as we've kind of talked about, where they faded late in the season and Tua was putting up some single digit games, and those aren't good for fantasy purposes. But this guy was still on an epic pace for the first 10 or 11 weeks of the season. He ended up finishing first in PFF passing grade, third in big time throws, first in total yards, and he has better weapons than the guys in front of him. Every other guy that I just named there, you have Brock Purdy, we have the questions with Brandon Ayuk. I mean, anybody who watched our Green Bay Packers show knows while Jordan Love has some decent receivers, none of them really blow the doors off anything. And then Dak Prescott, outside of, his main guy there who just happens to be holding out. So we won't say his name to jinx it. But, that's kind of the whole offense there. So when you look at that, you're looking at a guy who has a ton of weapons, and not to mention fourth. Miami was fourth in yards after catch per reception. So those guys, those weapons do a lot of work that do help prop up Tua. I think he's priced a little bit low, and I'm targeting him a little bit higher if I can.
Yeah, that's interesting. So again, we kind of joked about it at the beginning. Tua last year, weeks 1 through 9 before their bye week, points per game, he was the QB7. They come back from the bye weeks 10 through 17. He's points per game, the QB 22. So now overall for the season finished as QB 19 in points per game. He's being faded down to the point he's at right now. Vishaal, I'm kind of in the boat with you here, where in the 10th round, I'm okay with that. But we've also talked about in that same exact range, guys like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, who are the young guys who you can bet on. And then maybe they're your lottery ticket that can shoot up into the top 5. And you could get a guy like a Kirk Cousins or a Matt Stafford later on that you feel comfortable with. If Tua's your comfortable guy, do you have to take him in the 10th round? Who are you taking? Somebody later that's a lottery ticket? Like a JJ McCarthy? Like that would be the only later QB who really has a shot to, I guess, be a full-time starter and put up any kind of numbers. But what are you taking Tua for at this point to be your starter? I feel like there's bigger upside guys and guys that have similar floors that are later.
Yeah, and when you see like how well Miami did to start the season last year, and like Steve said, he's still only QB7 those first 9 weeks. Right. It's really hard to imagine that they're going to be significantly better on offenses compared to what they were last year when, again, they were leading the league in points scored. So where else can you go up? You can't really move up any further than that. So you feel like, yeah, I agree with Steve. There's just not enough upside as compared to some other guys in that range.
You guys forget one thing, though. They got the speed, baby. They got the speed. They got the speed.
Got Lightning
Except for Tua, though. Tua's the one guy who doesn't have the speed.
He doesn't have to run anywhere. I just need Tyreek Hill to run horizontally in front. I don't even have to take a drop back I could throw the ball to Tyreek Hill because I literally only have to do that little rocket pass, that little jet sweep pass that they do. And man, I think when you have built-in offense, I think part of it too is just I love the creativity of the offense that I think it expands. And we're going to talk about their weapons. I don't want to get too much into why I think they have potentially the best weapons in the NFL, which is kind of why I lean that way over other guys. But I do see what you guys are saying. I just don't think that it's necessarily sound thinking to expect the fall off. Now, I think we should kind of actualize it where this huge production spike that we saw at the beginning of the season, well, teeter that down a little bit. This really low drop, teeter that up a little bit. That's most likely what we're going to get based on the law of averages. So, I mean, I'm excited to see this offense, and I'm investing in Tua. If you guys haven't known, it's okay. You guys fade Tua. I'm going to go ahead and take him in our leagues, and we'll be good.
He's all yours. It's not that not that I'm not a fan of the player or that I think he won't put up points. It's the range to me.
Sure.
That's a little concerning because right now he's going as QB 14. And I feel like his floor is probably around 15, 16 on a points per game basis. I know I just said he finished a QB 19, but last year, but I'm saying this year, I feel like 15, 16 is probably his floor. So you're drafting him at his floor. I feel pretty comfortable that he can exceed where I'm going to get him in ADP. But like Vishaal was saying too, to me, the problem is that ceiling I feel like is 7 or 8. And as nice as it is to get somebody at a little bit of a value, I can get a guy who can finish at 7 or 8 in 2 or 3 rounds after I draft Tua. But I can also shoot for the moon with somebody like one of these rookies that could potentially get into the top 5, especially Jaden Daniels with his ability to run and get into the end zone that way. Like that Konami code type running back, quarterback is somebody who has that potential top 5 upside that I just don't think Tua can achieve.
Tua's not winning you a league this year. Let's put it that way. At best, he's going to be a comfortable guy. At worst, he can lose you a league if he gets hurt early.
Right. But again, I mean, our philosophy is always wait on QB. So if for whatever, like we're talking about the QB 14, if every other team in the league has a quarterback already and you're the last one to take one and Tua's your guy, you're feeling pretty great about it. I'm not complaining if that's the situation I'm in. Running back. What a weird animal this is in Miami. So we've got Devin Achane, RB9 in the ECR, 37 overall, RB9 in ADP, going at the very end of the second round. My man, old man, Raheem Mostert, RB26, 81 overall in the ECR, RB26, 712 in the ADP. Mostert did a lot of good things for me last season. Nobody wanted him. I got him off waivers in Dynasty because everybody thought he was just dead and gone. And boy, did I ride him to the semifinals of my championship in that league. That was great. But I mean, is he still a thing? Remember when Jeff Wilson was a thing? Remember when Savon Ahmed was a thing in this offense? I'm reminiscing. It's making me think of Myles Gaskin. Remember when Myles Gaskin was in the league?
He won
what
me
a time
league,
to be
man.
alive.
He was an amazing, amazing player for like 5 games.
Yeah.
Totally awesome.
But that's also my concern, right? The only one who has consistently flourished in this McDaniel offense is Raheem Mostert. That's the only guy who we have seen consistently do this over and over again. Jeff Wilson has shown flashes, and now he's on the roster bubble. Ahmed showed flashes for a few games when everyone else was hurt. He's on the roster bubble. Now you've got Achane, who did good things last season, but he also got hurt and missed time. And I feel like we're just doing it all over again with a different name. And here we are. Remember Jay Ajayi? Man, I'm having so many flashbacks to Miami Dolphin running backs in the top 10 that we thought would live up to the hype. Am I wrong to be skeptical about this?
You're not wrong
that's what I'm saying.
to be skeptical because there's 14 backs in this backfield, and this is a team that's going to throw the shit out of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
What we see is, like you just said it, Raheem Mostert's not going away, 32 years old, but he outpaced Achane in carries all but 3 games when they were both healthy. Yeah. So while Achane definitely was highlighted on the passing downs, that role could potentially be cut into with, Jalen Wright coming in because he has a lot of oomph. And as we just talked about, Jeff Wilson and Savon Ahmed are probably not making this roster, and it's because Chris Brooks is just better. But I mean, RB9 is that's
wild,
right?
I'm not comfortable. So let me get this out first and foremost. Achane is excellent. He is great. But the stock is just too high without the promise of the workload. Now, he had 5.1 yards after contact per attempt. That's more than all but 4 running backs in total yards per carry. So that's a huge gap that we just don't see from backs. It's almost like he is playing an entirely different game. Now, if he didn't have a guy right behind him and Raheem Mostert, who has been supremely successful no matter who they've brought in behind him, and they always find him carries. I just don't see it paying out.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at that 7.8 yards per attempt number. That's why he's going so high. The number I'm looking more closely at is the 9.4 attempts per game. Anybody averaging less than 10 carries a game cannot be taken in the top 2 rounds, 3 rounds, probably not even the top 4 rounds for me. That is wild. His attempts would have to go up quite significantly from last season to justify this price. And they might go up, but like both of you guys have said, Mostert did a lot of good things last year. He had 20 touchdowns. That's not something to sneeze at. He's going to get touches. He might, I don't know, Mason, you said he's behind Achane. I don't know. Is he? Are you for sure? Like, what if Mostert is just a starter again this year? Well,
Right.
like,
Well, yeah.
You can't take Achane that high if you're not even fully confident that he's going to be the one leading the team in touches. Like, it's a ridiculous price. I don't know how you can justify it. You're taking way too big a swing. It's not necessary. There's way better, safer picks out there that you're going to feel more comfortable with. You don't want to be going to the season and be like, week 3, I'm already like, I want to kill myself because I took this guy super high and he's not coming anywhere close to producing what you wanted to. Like, he can blow up your entire team super early.
I rode that roller coaster last year where 1 week Mostert puts up a 25 and the next week he puts up a 7 because Achane and Wilson were getting a majority of the touches. And I was okay riding that roller coaster because I was doing it for free. I didn't have to invest anything in it. It was a guy I got off waivers that was just helping me out in one of my flex positions. So right. I wasn't concerned about it. But if you're going by ADP right now, your team with the number 1 overall pick would be Christian McCaffrey. You're feeling pretty decent about that, right? And then Devin Achane and Travis Kelce. And I'm wondering what the hell happened to me? Like, how did I get in this position? What have I done to myself that this is the team I'm now having to trot out every single week? So ADP is kind of crazy right now. But even as my RB2, I am not very comfortable with that. Like, that's just scary to me. Whereas you're telling me I can get Raheem Mostert at the end of the 7th round. He could fall to me at the top half of the 8th round.
That's not even
my
starting
4th or 5th running back. Like, I could have that for basically nothing, and he could put up better numbers than the guy going in the 2nd round. That's insanity.
In an alternate, more, grounded universe, you're looking at these guys probably a little bit closer to each other. Now, there might still be a gap. There might be more people investing in Achane, but yeah, why would you pass up that opportunity to get the guy that's been just more productive versus the guy that costs more and has a smaller sample size? I get that it's the promise. I mean, that's to answer my own question. It's the promise that he's going to do it on a full-time workload and have that type of production. And like I said, those numbers tend to, return to the mean eventually. So
again, we've talked about our preferred draft strategy here. If you're in the back end of that first round, if you're in the 10, 11, 12 range, like, there's a non-zero chance you could be starting your draft with like a Bijan Robinson and a Breece Hall or Breece Hall, one or the other in that first round. Come back and get Kyron as your RB2, pound wide receiver for like 4 rounds, get Raheem Mostert as your RB3 and Kyler Murray right there bumping next to each other. Like, you could, to stack like that and just have a team that I'm confident in and have the depth to win and stay healthy. Like, I feel pretty good about that roster. I would much rather go with Mostert between him and Achane, especially at that price. You mentioned Jalen Wright, Mason. Is there anything that excites you about taking a flyer on him currently going in the 12th round?
I mean, he can fit in anywhere in this offense, and I wouldn't doubt that they'll have a package for him. Now, is it really like you could expect him to be carving out, sizable touches any game? No. But he's somebody that you're going to want to monitor on your waivers. And maybe if you have, deeper benches, you can throw that dart at that one. But he has a ton of talent. He's super fast, very electric. It's one of these things that this whole running back room is like the same guy almost, just speed, speed, speed. And
well, I feel like in this same area, same vein last season is when we were talking about Achane. Like
yeah,
this is what Miami does. They cycle through these guys and they are your heroes for your 0 RB strategy. Because I will take a 12th round dart throw on a guy like Jalen Wright who could work his way into a regular role on this offense. Because you could have a situation like Achane from last season where you're only getting 6-7 touches a game, but you're exploding for huge plays and putting up numbers. So yeah, I would absolutely be willing to roll the dice on that. I love the value I can get on Raheem Mostert. You could not force me to take Devin Achane in the second round. I could not do that. Wide receiver. You talked about speed. Here we go. More speed, right? Just what you want. Tyreek Hill. Let's not spend a lot of time on this. Wide receiver 2 in the ECR, number 3 overall. ADP wide receiver 2, also number 3 overall. Is there any objection to him being the third player off the board?
it's that he's not the second player off the board, maybe?
Because of Lamb and the holdout? Would that be
yeah, I mean, that's where I would go.
You would take him at 2.
I would take him at 2.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the only thing.
But so the point is, if you're at 3, he's not getting past you.
No.
So you're in line with ADP. Okay,
you should jump for joy that he made it to you at 3. You have just the most dynamic weapon in the NFL. He was just named the number 1 most talented player in the NFL, which I guess, which is crazy. And I mean, I get it. Why?
But are you going to say but, Mason? If you say but right now, I'm going to come through this screen and slap you. He's not the number 1 player in the NFL.
He is the number 1 player in the NFL. I'm not saying but like that. I get why some people are like maybe raising their eyebrows at it or whatever, but bottom line, like, he is the most dynamic weapon in the NFL, and age doesn't seem to be an issue at 30 years old. And I mean, what else do we want to say? The only interesting thing about this wide receiver room is potentially what they're going to do in the back end of it, not what they're going to do at the front end of it. We know what they're going to do with Tyreek Hill. They're going to feed him the ball and they're going to get out of his way. This offense runs through him. They're going to feed him in every which way that they can. He runs the most, what's the word I'm looking for? Extensive route tree. Yeah. Jalen Waddle is the perfect complement to him. I don't know what else. They've done a really good job building the top half of this wide receiver room. It's flawless.
We all agree. Tyreek Hill is not getting past the number 3 pick. If you are there, problem solved. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 15 in the ECR, 23 overall. So experts have him as a back end second round pick, which is very interesting because that would present a real possibility of you having both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on your fantasy team, which I don't know how I feel about that. But I digress because the ADP is wide receiver 19, end of the 3rd round. So the public less interested than the ECR, not by much, but still slightly less interested, maybe by almost a full round, actually. So Jalen Waddle, 3rd round right now in ADP. Do you feel like that's justified? That's warranted? Do you feel like I remember a time before Tyreek Hill got there, he was a top 10 guy. And now all of a sudden, because Tyreek is there, you would think that would help him, putting him into more favorable situations. But now it's being taken as a negative. Vishaal, what do you feel about Jalen Waddle right now?
I feel pretty similar about him as what we talked about with Tua. Like, I'm not going to, it's fine if you want to take him there. I think that's perfectly fine value. I just, again, think there's probably other guys I would feel a little bit better about if you can take him a few spots later or even a round or 2 later. I think the big thing for me is just the touchdown consistency is not great. It's not, he hasn't been in the league for very long, so you can't really say that there's a pattern or anything like that, but only 4 touchdowns last year. That's hard to swallow. I understand he puts up big yards and everything like that, but you would like to see a guy who's a little bit more of a red zone threat if you're taking somebody there when you can have somebody like Mike Evans or Brandon Ayuk going just around the same range. Much rather have those guys than take Waddle and you're just praying for big plays the whole time, and occasionally he gets in the end zone. So if you want to take him, fine. I think for me, there's other guys I'd rather look at.
Mason.
So the interesting thing is what it's going to play in a little bit further down, like I talked about, the wide receiver 3 and 4 spots. Why I say that is because this is going to be an interesting case study in the sweet spot between how many heads is too many heads to feed and what is the sweet spot of there's too many guys to cover, so and so is getting a one-on-one.
Right.
And the reason I say that is because this is a pretty expensive price on Jalen Waddle's draft stock, but he does carry more talent around him in that receiving core this year than ever before. I know we want to talk about, or the media at least wants to talk about Odell out the wide receiver 3 spot. But the real thing is Malik Washington, who's going to probably be playing in the slot next to Jalen Waddle quite a bit. And that's going to be an interesting way of how defenses answer that, because Malik Washington, an excellent route runner. He is stupendous at getting separation, understanding his breaks, really sure hands. I mean, he's going to take over for Braxton Berrios, who was definitely not a needle mover at that position for them previously.
What? No.
So, and then when we look at Tyreek Hill plays all over the place, but he does take a ton of snaps in the slot for them. So when we look at that, Jalen Waddle is going to have a running mate next to him that is going to free him up quite a bit. Does that equate to production that's going to pay out where he's at? I just don't know. Like you said, I might lean a slightly different direction with some of the other receivers in that slot, but it's something that's going to bear monitoring, especially if you do end up drafting him.
I think there's some decent running back value in that range right now. But let's play Neil's favorite game of Would You Rather. So in that same zone of Jalen Waddle, would you rather have Waddle or Stephon Diggs?
Diggs.
I might take Waddle there. I think I'd be comfortable taking Waddle at that point.
Okay. I'm going to skip San Francisco since there's so many question marks about that right now. Waddle or DJ Moore?
DJ Moore.
Moore.
Yep. Waddle or Michael Pittman?
Michael Pittman.
Pittman.
Yep. Waddle or Malik Neighbors?
Depends who I took it before then.
Waddle.
It's hard to say.
Waddle probably
if he,
yeah.
Like that's so Neighbors right now is going 4-4. He's the top of the 4th round. So if he's your second or third wide receiver, would you rather have your third wideout be Waddle or Neighbors? I would think I would go Neighbors.
Daniel Jones is so bad.
He's the number one on a bad offense.
Me and V are so low on Dan Jones that I think I'd be higher if you were out there throwing Neighbors the ball. I'm going to be honest.
Fine. I buy the talent of Neighbors and the fact that he's competing with virtually no one.
Without a doubt.
For targets, even if it's a bad QB and a bad team.
My issue with Neighbors, which I don't think is being the projection for him a lot. I think everybody's projecting him as, hey, nobody. This is something we're getting a little bit off topic, but what I see is like, hey, you have a guy who isn't going to get a ton of on target passes. And that becomes an issue. Like when you look at Terry McLaurin for years, who last year they had like 81 off target passes in Washington. Yeah. And that tends to be, their calling card is not being able to complete balls that they're putting in the air. And it's not like it's Terry McLaurin's fault because he's one of the most dynamic and talented receivers in the game. And I think that's kind of where you're looking at this range of guy. Supremely talented dudes. Jalen Waddle, supremely talented. Malik Neighbors, supremely talented. These guys are in a supremely talented range, but question marks of workload, usage.
I think it depends on what you're looking for.
Talented,
I think if you're looking for safety, if you're looking for a solid floor, I'd want Waddle. But if I'm swinging for the moon, I want Neighbors.
Sure.
We talked about this one yesterday. Cooper Kupp or Jalen Waddle? Kupp.
Kupp.
Jalen Waddle or DK Metcalf?
That's close. Probably take Waddle.
Yeah. I agree.
Jalen Waddle or a full round until Devonta Smith?
I would be comfortable taking Smith a round later.
This is the problem, because you've got Devonta Smith a full round later. A round and a half later, you've got Zay Flowers. Right around that, you got Tank Dell. You've got George Pickens. You've got T. Higgins. You've got Amari Cooper. There's a ton of value at wide receiver. I don't feel like I have to take Jalen Waddle early. This is what I'm saying. If I want a floor, I'm comfortable taking Waddle, but I would take Neighbors for his ceiling because I know I can get a safe floor in the next 2 rounds and feel really comfortable with it.
Agreed.
So to me, I think I would take guys like we talked about, like Moore, Kupp, Neighbors, Pittman, who can be the alpha on their roster and can have a huge season that can win you your league, where Waddle is just going to be somebody that you can comfortably rely on as a wide receiver 2 or 3.
Yep. Agreed.
You mentioned OBJ, Mason, but Malik, OBJ, none of that is appealing in drafting.
Not in a fantasy sense for them, anyway.
If something would happen to either Hill or Waddle, do either of those guys become interesting off the waivers?
It depends on who. They play different roles. So if Tyreek Hill were to get hurt for some reason, I think you'd see a bigger dose of Malik Washington, who has a ton of experience in the slot. And like I alluded to earlier, Tyreek Hill, he's all over the place, but he is in the slot quite a bit for them. Odell, on the other hand, is primarily an outside receiver. He's just really limited in his route tree. Teams over the years have just decreased his route tree down to the basis of you run goes, slants, and digs and nothing else. So can he fit into the offense and, work? Yes, I would think if Jalen Waddle were to go down, he would probably be the guy that they tab to run that role for them, because Jalen Waddle, while he moves around a little bit, he's primarily outside. That's where I would look at it. But in terms of like, if everybody's healthy and they're all playing, not really, no.
We wrap it up with tight end, Jonnu Smith, Durham Smythe, the 2-headed monster of blocking, because that's what they're there to do, is block and not really catch the ball at this point. Miami Dolphins tight end hasn't been relevant since. So I got nothing. I got nothing for you there. Can't pick one out. So yeah, I never bought one, never will. I don't even think as a streamer. I mean, I love Jonnu. I've loved Jonnu for years. Can't even do it as a streaming option. I can't do it. Like I was in our dynasty league is it's doing the rookie draft, finishing the second half of the rookie draft right now. And it's 26-man rosters, deep benches. And at the end of the 4th round, Fantasy Pros was telling me I should take Jonnu Smith. And I was like, I appreciate it, Fantasy Pros. I know you know me, but I'm good. I'm a pass. I don't need him as my tight end 4. I'm solid. I'll take something else. I'll take a kicker. That's okay.
Yeah. Blocking, man. Blocking is good.
Yeah.
You need blocking.
Yeah. There are going to be weeks when they catch a ball in the end zone and they put up 7 points because they got 1 catch in the end zone. It happens. It happens to the best tight ends out there. So if you want to stream them and try to get lucky, go for it. But nope, no need to roster those guys. You're all set. All right. We did it. We survived. We had some interesting ones spoon-fed to us today, boys. But tomorrow it is Neil should be back with Minnesota. He gets the JJ McCarthy experience. Lucky him.
You mean the Sam Darnold experience?
No. He wants to talk about JJ. Let him talk about JJ. It'll be good.
I think I'll be on that show, so I'm glad you told me this. I'm gonna poke him. I'm gonna
talk about Sam Darnold. You go right ahead. You're gonna see some ghosts tomorrow. Everybody will. We appreciate you guys being here. Make sure you hit up the guys on their socials. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Till next time, keep up the nonsense.
I'm Tim Kitzer from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, and you can find all the guys at ImportantNonsense.com. Kaboom!